Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is MTG Ghoul Dude, and I wanted to share with y'all my latest paper build. I actually ended up building Anim Pakal, Thousandth Moon, and I had a blast with her. The couple games I got to play with her, so I figured I'd go on ahead and share it with you guys. So, what does she do? For one, a red and a white, and they're still mixing up them pips. They're not putting them in Wooburg order. You get a 1/2 legendary creature human soldier. Whenever you attack with one or more non-gnome creatures, put a +1/+1 counter on Anim Pakal, then create X 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens that are tapped and attacking, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on Anim Pakal. This deck was lovingly bequeathed the name Me and My Gnom-ies for the holiday Christmas season. So I decided to run with it, but I still wanted to build it the way I had it. If you're been with the channel for a minute, I wanted to build it like I did on Arena, with a very, very powerful card, Winota, join our forces. Now Winota is a very powerful card in this deck because it triggers on Anim, and the way you do it is you stack the Anim Pakal triggers, and you make it to where Anim is on the stack last and Winota is on the stack first. So Winota sees more creatures attacking, and gnomes aren't humans. So I mean, it just makes it common sense that we're just gonna keep however many gnomes we're throwing into the attack zone. However many we're throwing into combat, that's how many humans we're going to be trying to escape off the top. But before we get into all of that, how are we going to get Anim out? And what are we going to use to support her? Well, we're going to start with our mana ramp with the good old Soul Ring, Wayfarer's Bauble, Arcane Signet, Boros Signet, Velwar Stone, Mind Stone. I didn't want to do it. Moon Silver Key, Talisman of Conviction, Thought Vessel, Command Sphere, Honored Heirloom for that graveyard hate, Relic of Legends because it does double duty, and Smothering Tithe because we are also messing with the number of tokens we can make, so we're doing some token shenanigans. Ecologist Terrarium is a land fetch to your hand, but it's also, when you sacrifice it, you can put a +1/+1 counter on target commander. So I figured that was pretty good. Tarian's Soul Cleaver is in the deck because not only does it do... Let's get that back straight. There we go. Not only does it give our commander vigilance, but not only that, but it gives... Whenever an artifact or creature is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you put a counter on an equipped creature. So we're constantly trying to amass +1/+1 counters on Anim. And we got her some pretty little boots. And then we got Throne of the God Pharaoh in the artifact, the last in the artifact stack. And because this is great, because if nobody is blocking our gnomes, or we have invincible gnomes, at the end of the end step, everybody's just going to lose life equal to our tapped creatures. So that is pretty good. And like I said, we are doing some token shenanigans, so we got to have the Anointed Procession. I'm just working with what I got, so Anointed Procession was all I had. Perforos is going to ping every time, and so are Impact Tremors, everybody. So we're going to keep doing that. But we're also going to be sacking gnomes to the Goblin Bombardment if we don't have this, or Extruder, or the Terrarian. We're going to find ways to get counters on Anim. But like I said, we do have two separate stacks of two different types of creatures. We're non-human and human. So let's start out with the non-human, starting out with Tawashi Godbot. This puts a counter, and you can draw a card for each modified creature. If you're going to be throwing +1/+1 counters around, you might as well have this, so you can you know, get that free card draw. Devilish Valet. I love this card for this deck, especially because every time a creature enters the battlefield, every time a creature, not if all of them all at once, it counts every single creature they enter. It doubles its power, and it has trample and haste. So if you're swinging with it and a name with 7 counters on it, guess what? It's about to go to 8, and you're about to double his power 8 times. So that's actually pretty unique. Witty Roastmaster does a impression of a Impact Tremors. Ornithopter is for more ramp. Iron Apprentice gives it a counter when it dies. Solemn Simulacrum is a little bit of ramp. The Extruder, this is the card I alluded to earlier, because for 4 mana it's a 4/3 Juggernaut with Echo 4, but that doesn't matter. You can sacrifice an artifact and put a +1/+1 counter on a target creature. This is one of our enablers. If we can get it to stay on the battlefield, we're just going to be sacking gnomes to make more gnomes later on. So that's actually pretty good. A little bit of card advantage with the Rumor Gatherer, and we do have 2 more that are actually in the card advantage section, but we're going to leave them there. Selfless Spirit for that indestructible, and Mere Scrappling so we can sack and put a counter. But with the Extruder, you sack it, you put a counter on a thing, and then you take Mere Scrappling's counter and put it on a thing. So it kind of pulls double duty in the deck. And it's not a golem. We don't have any golems in the deck. That was another thing I wanted to do. So now let's get into some of the humans. Lunarite Veteran for a little bit of life gain. Humble Defector for card draw. Esper Sentinel has got card advantage. Siege Veteran is going to put a counter on a name, and whenever a name dies, or whoever else has a counter on them, or another non-token soldier, get a colorless soldier artifact. It's not really going to be too relevant. Orzhov Advocist. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player may put 2 +1/+1 counters on a creature they control. If a player does, that player controls cannot attack you or a planeswalker you control until your next turn. So that's actually pretty good. Blade Historian, giving all your creatures double strike, which is amazing. Lorien with the removal and the card draw later on. I snuck in a win with Lorien. Just, you know, I'm going to feed you some cards. You're going to help me out. You're not going to hit me. We're cool. And then I ended up winning the game because I had better card advantage than everybody else. Soul Warden for that life gain. Boromir, Warden of the Tower, is actually pretty good in a bigger games because people are going to be throwing all kinds of weird ass spells out. And if you need to, you know, stop that from happening, Boromir is actually I don't know what the best way to call it, but it's good in a little, sometimes even more higher power games because, you know, everybody's going to be throwing around the Force Will, the Force Negation, and stuff like that. And then, if a board wipe's coming, guess what? The ring tempts you, and all of your creatures are indestructible if you sack him. Keeper of the Court, if we're behind, it's going to help us move back up in mana and in dudes. So that's pretty good. And Thalia, Heretic Cathar, because, you know, trying to slow your opponents down so they can't outrace you is actually pretty important. Now let's move on to the card draw, or the card advantage, if you must. We got Faithless Looting, Gamble, so we can try and hurry up and get that one Nota. Bitter Reunion, give haste also. Tormenting Voice, Thrill of Possibility. Symmetry Matrix is actually very good because those gnomes enter, and for 1 mana you can draw a card. That's pretty good. But we're also going to see that Big Score is going to give us some treasures, and Welcoming Vampire is just going to give us a card, but it's only once a turn. And Mentor the Meek lets us pay 1 for a card for each creature. So that's amazing. And now we move into the removal or interaction stack. Path to Exile and that beautiful art. Swords to Plowshares. Boros Charm can deal damage or make your dudes indestructible or double strikey. Rip apart. I can't tell you for some reason how many times this card showed up in those games, and I made sure to shuffle. You better believe I made sure to shuffle, but I still found this card almost every game, which is pretty funny because I also used it to rip apart Soul Rings just about 90% of the time. Wear and Tear. Break Ties, and this you can use this to reinforce to put a counter on Anim. Chaos Warp. Stroke of Midnight is becoming one of my favorite removal spells because it's a destroy target non-land permanent type spell. It's along the lines of the Beast. What is it called? Beast Within. There we go. Beast Within type effects. And then one of our last more targeted removal is Dead and Gone. Dead deals 2 damage, and Gone returns target creature you don't control to its owner's hand. And here we get into our board wipes, where we actually have 3. We have Wrath of God, Vanquish the Horde, and Blasphemous Act. Because we want to try and be setting up, even if we have to blow the board up, we want to be trying to set up faster than everybody else. So, moving on to our non-basic lands, we have the always powerful and always played Command Tower, Rugged Prairie, Spectator Seating, Sacred Foundry, Arid Mesa, Sunbaked Canyon, Opal Palace to put counters on Anim, Needle Verge and Blight Climb Pathway, Demolition Field for that sweet, sweet land removal, War Room, Plateau, and Temple of the False God. Well, that's it, and I really can't say how much fun I had with this deck. I loved playing this deck, and I would insist for you guys to give it a try, build it your own way. The Winotus thing was a thing that I had just, it was a theme that was imposed upon me because of the way I built it on Arena, and I loved it that way, so I just couldn't think of a better way to build it, and I fell in love with it. But that is going to be it for today, guys. I will have the Archidekt deck link down in the description whenever I get it done. So be looking for that in the description. But that is going to be it, and I will see you guys next time in the graveyard.